If you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe to see more of our content. And also make sure to ring the bell if you actually want to see our content. Thanks, YouTube. If you really like what you see, you should know we did it all on a budget of thoughts and prayers. Just imagine what we can do with an actual budget. Become a patron of ours to find out. This week, I'm glad to welcome Dutch McFadden to this list of our rare tier and up patrons. And of course, thank you as always to all of our other patrons. And here's where I'm going to shake up this week's intro a bit. Today's actually World Mental Health Day. And normally I do tend to keep a lot of my personal stuff out of the channel, since I feel it's neither the place nor the type of content to do so. But mental illness is a subject which deeply impacts me. So in the chaos that is 2020, please make sure you're taking the time to be well. And if things ever seem dire, don't be afraid to reach out to family, loved ones, or even 24/7 at this number here. Know that I care for and appreciate all of you, and I'd like you all to be well. Alright, thanks for indulging me with that, everyone. For that, let's go ahead and jump into player introductions. First off this week, we have RJ playing Sliver Legion. RJ's deck is bringing back old baddies from Magic's past, as he looks to build up a Sliver board state before dropping Sliver Legion as a lord to overrun his opponents. RJ kept Sylvan Scrying, Birds of Paradise, Winged Sliver, Talon Sliver, Stomping Ground, Caves of Quelos, and Isolated Chapel. Next comes Michael, bringing back Riku of Two Reflections. And honestly, there's not much I can say about this Spellslinger deck, which I haven't said before. Michael kept Clever Impersonator, Mission Briefing, Preordain, Mana Confluence, a Forest, a Mountain, and an Island. Then comes Josh, bringing you back Selvala Explorer Returned. Once again, Josh's Selvala deck is focused around generating a ton of life gain to fuel various effects, some of which are game-ending. Josh kept Zendikar Resurgent, Sword of Feast and Famine, Swiftfoot Boots, Oracle of Moldiah, a snow-covered forest, and a pair of snow-covered plains. Last but not least, we have Spencer playing Xyris the Writhing Storm. Xyris is focused around forcing Spencer's opponents to wheel often, so Spencer can create a bunch of 1/1 snakes and trigger various ETB damage effects. Spencer kept Wildest Dreams, Frantic Search, Magus of the Wheel, Mystical Retrieval, an Island, and a pair of mountains. RJ starts us off. He shocks in Stomping Ground, and uses it to cast a Birds of Paradise, before passing off. Michael drops an Island, and casts a Preordain. He leaves both cards he scries on top, before drawing one, and passing off as well. Josh drops a Command Tower, and then Spencer closes out round 1 with an Island. RJ drops a tapped Godless Shrine. He casts a Sylvan Scrying, and uses it to put a Sliver Hive to hand, before passing off. Michael does this, before casting a Rampant Growth. He then uses the growth to bring in a tapped Island, before passing off. Josh drops a Forest. He casts a Thought Vessel, and passes off to Spencer, who closes out round 2 in the same way as round 1. RJ drops Sliver Hive. He casts a Lava Belly Sliver, and immediately passes off. Michael drops a Mountain, as RJ remembers to ping Michael with Lava Belly, while also gaining a life. Michael then casts a Mission Briefing, and leaves both cards he surveils on top, before choosing to cast his Rampant Growth. The growth is exiled, as Michael goes to put a tapped forest into play, before passing off yet again. Josh drops a Plains. He casts Oracle of Moldiah, and reveals the top card of his library, before playing a Plains from hand as the second land, and passing off. And then Spencer drops a Mountain, and passes off yet again. RJ drops an untapped Rootbound Crag. He casts Winged Sliver, and pings Josh with Lava Belly. RJ follows up with a Talon Sliver, and then hits Spencer this time with Lava Belly. RJ then moves to combat, and hits Michael for 2 with Lava Belly, before passing off. Michael drops a Mountain. He cast Clever Impersonator and has it enter as a copy of Oracle of Moldiah, before revealing the top card of his library, playing a Mana Confluence from hand as his second land, and then passing off. Josh casts a Sword of Feast and Famine, and in response, Spencer casts a Frantic Search, drawing 2, discarding 2, and untapping 3 lands. He doesn't hit a counterspell, so he lets the Feast and Famine resolve through, as Josh goes ahead and equips it to Oracle. Josh then moves to combat and swings the Oracle at RJ, who lets the damage resolve through, and as he does so, RJ discards a card as Josh untaps all of his lands. In main 2, Josh casts both a Wall of Shards and a Swiftfoot Boots before passing turn. Spencer drops a Forest. He casts Magus of the Wheel and passes off once again. RJ drops an Isolated Chapel. He casts a Mana Weft Sliver and decides that fair is fair, so he pings himself with Lava Belly Sliver before gaining a life, as he says this.
I went around the table, I'm a man of my word.
RJ then follows up with Sliver Legion and pings Michael as it ETBs. This happens.
It's pretty clear I want you guys to stick around, hence why I bolted myself with my own Lava Belly. I want people to be like, okay, he has slivers, not, oh, hey, he just wants to play a sliver deck. Everybody, let's just beat the shit out of him until he's out of the game.
Leading RJ to ultimately decide not to swing this turn, and with that, he passes off. Michael casts Imperial Recruiter and uses its ETB to tutor Phyrexian Metamorph to hand. Michael then pings himself to cast Phyrexian Metamorph and has it enter as a copy of Josh's Wall of Shards, so he has a blocker. And with that, Michael passes off. Josh has Spencer gain a life on his upkeep. He casts Selvala and equips her with Swiftfoot Boots, before immediately parlaying. Josh adds 3 green mana and gains 3 life, before each player draws a card. Josh then plays a Plains from top deck, and follows up with a Kara Metra. He moves to combat and swings Oracle at Spencer for 4. Spencer discards on that damage, as Josh also untaps his lands. And in main 2, Josh casts a Rites of Flourishing before passing off. Spencer draws 2 and only drops a mountain. He then casts a Reclamation Sage to destroy Michael's Wall of Shards before passing off. RJ draws 2 and drops a Brushland before shocking in a Blood Crypt. He casts a Gale Rider Sliver and pings Josh as it ETBs. RJ then goes Hellbent to cast Diffusion Sliver before Spencer gets pinged with Lava Belly. Finally, RJ creates a Sliver token and stays fair by pinging himself with Lava Belly. RJ moves to combat and randomly decides to swing out at Michael for lethal, and now in Archenemy mode, RJ passes off. Josh gives Spencer 2 life on his upkeep, and then draws 2, before playing a Nykthos from top deck thanks to Oracle. He activates Nykthos to cast Zendikar Resurgent, and then swings Oracle at Spencer for both an untap and a discard. In main 2, Josh parlays with Selvala, and adds 3 and gains 3 before each player draws again. He activates Nykthos again, and then casts a Beacon of Immortality targeting himself to double his life total. The beacon is shuffled back in, and after cuts, he plays a Sunpetal Grove from top deck, and uses his floating mana to cast an Aetherflux Reservoir. He immediately activates it to shoot RJ and eliminate the archenemy in the process. He follows up with a Shalai Voice of Plenty, and gains 3 life on that cast, before putting in a tapped Canopy Vista. Josh then casts a Font of Mythos, and gains 4 on that cast, before casting a Collective Voyage to put himself 1 life short of winning this turn. He and Spencer pay a total of 3 mana into Collective Voyage, and go to bring in these 3 basics tapped. Josh is ultimately hellbent at this point though, so he passes off to Spencer. Spencer draws 4, and puts in a forest. He then casts a Brainstorm, and draws 3 cards, before putting 2 back. He casts a Teferi's Puzzle Box, and follows up with a Cryptolith Rite, before passing off. And we were so close to finishing a game without any mistakes. With Teferi's Puzzle Box on board, and 3 additional draws from effects, Josh's draw step should play out like this. He draws his normal card for turn. His triggers go on the stack to draw a total of 3 additional cards. Spencer's Puzzle Box trigger goes on the stack, Puzzle Box resolves, and Josh bottoms the card that he drew for turn before drawing a new card. Josh draws his remaining 3 cards. Instead, Josh did all 4 of his draws before resolving Puzzle Box. This ultimately doesn't really change the outcome of the game that much, since Josh would have drawn into a single spell to cast either way. He casts a Lightning Greaves and gains a life from Aetherflux Reservoir, before immediately unloading on Spencer to walk away with the win.